All right, let's get right to it. If you're gearing up for your 2026 board exams, you need to listen up. We are about to dive into the absolute most critical biology questions that experts are saying are pretty much guaranteed to be on your exam paper. Okay, so here's the deal. We've dug through old papers, we've listened to the experts, and we've figured out the topics that just keep showing up year after year. This is the stuff you absolutely need to know. Let's do this. First on the list, and this is a big one, photosynthesis. I'm telling you, this is a non-negotiable. If you want to get a top score, you have to nail this. We're calling this a 100% guaranteed question area. Seriously. And this is what it's going to look like. This is the exact kind of question you can expect to see. It's almost always a two-parter, and you've got to get both parts right for those full marks. So let's break it down. What are the raw materials, and what are the key steps? Here is your perfect answer broken down. The raw materials? Super straightforward. You've got carbon dioxide from the air, water from the soil, and of course, sunlight, giving it all the energy. Now for the key steps. Just remember the sequence. First, the plant absorbs that light energy. Second, it converts that light energy into chemical energy. And third, it uses that chemical energy to turn carbon dioxide into carbohydrates, plant food. Those are the key words you need to write down.
Okay, let's switch gears and talk about diagram questions. These things pop up all the time, and honestly, they're an easy way to score points if you know what you're looking at. We're going to check out a few classic examples you'll see from asexual reproduction.
First up, we've got budding. And it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's a type of asexual reproduction where a whole new organism just starts growing from a little outgrowth or a bud on the parent. Think of it like a tiny clone that just pops out and grows.
And the go-to example they will almost always show you is this guy, the Hydra. The second you see this creature in a diagram with a little mini-me growing off its side, your brain should immediately scream budding. The key thing to remember is that this little bud eventually just breaks off and goes on to live its own life as a new, identical Hydra.
Next, we have something that feels like it's straight out of a comic book, regeneration. This is the incredible ability to renew and restore lost or damaged body parts. But sometimes it gets even cooler, allowing a brand new organism to grow from just a tiny piece of the original.
So the superstar example for regeneration is always Planaria. If you see this little flatworm in a picture, especially one where it's being cut up, the answer is regeneration. And here's the wild part. Any piece can grow into a whole new worm. It's incredible.
And here's one more diagram I'm almost positive you're going to see. How an amoeba eats. The examiners love this one. You just need to memorize these 5 steps in order. It starts with ingestion. The amoeba wraps around its food. Then digestion. Enzymes break it down. Then absorption. The good stuff gets soaked up. After that is assimilation, using that energy to grow. And finally, egestion, spitting out the leftover waste. Boom, boom, boom.
So, we've seen how organisms can literally make copies of themselves. But what about passing on specific traits like height or color? That's where genetics comes in. I know, it can feel a little complicated, but honestly, it all comes down to a few basic ideas, starting with the OG, Gregor Mendel, and his famous pea plants.
Here it is. This is a foundational genetics problem that comes up again and again. A pure, tall plant crossed with a pure dwarf one. They want to know what percentage of the plants will be tall in the first generation and then in the second generation.
And this table lays out the answer perfectly. Check it out. In that first generation, the F1, 100% of the plants are going to be tall. Why? Because the gene for tallness, that capital T, is dominant. It just overpowers the dwarf gene. But then, when you cross those plants with each other, that's when things get interesting. In the F2 generation, that recessive trait comes back. You get a classic 3-to-1 ratio, meaning 75% of the plants will be tall. All right, let's hit our final topic, ecology. And inside ecology, there is one super simple but really powerful rule you have got to know. It's all about how energy moves through a food chain. Just remember this number, 10%. It doesn't sound like a lot, right? But it is so important for how an ecosystem works. In fact, this one number pretty much explains why food chains aren't a mile long.
This is the 10% law. All it means is that when energy moves from one level of the food chain to the next, like when a rabbit eats grass, only about 10% of that energy actually gets stored in the rabbit. The other 90%? It just gets used up for living, running around, staying warm, all that stuff. So energy gets lost at every single step.
And this aquatic food chain shows it perfectly.
So let's say the phytoplankton at the bottom have 100% of the energy from the sun. Well, the zooplankton that eat them only get about 10% of that. The small fish that eat the zooplankton, they only get 1%. And that big fish at the top, it's only getting a measly 0.1% of all that original energy. You see? The energy runs out really, really fast.
So, we've gone through the guaranteed questions, the diagrams you need to know, the core concepts. But to wrap this all up, I want to leave you with one last tip that's bigger than just memorizing facts.
Because look, success isn't just about knowing the answers on these slides. It's about really understanding the ideas behind them so you can feel confident. It's about your strategy, about staying